Hello.
What if I don't want to say hi? You can't make me say hi.
I literally hate this chat. Alright, try it again. You said hi already, but yeah. Welcome to the live stream. We're going to be talking about the potential tornado outbreak that's going to be happening this Easter weekend on both Saturday and Sunday. Sunday is probably the one that you guys are going to be wanting to hear about the most. But we're going to go in order from closest to furthest out. So, yeah. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? The Storm Prediction Center, as of 0Z, has issued an enhanced risk for parts of central Texas. This includes San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Killeen, and Round Rock. So, the people around there should obviously monitor the weather. However, the issue with this is that it's going to be towards the evening, and I'll show you the timing in a bit. But the risks do include a 5% chance for tornadoes, a 15% chance for gusty winds over 58 miles per hour, and hail over an inch, and a hatch risk that includes hail over 2 inches. So, definitely one of those things where this is definitely. We're not playing here. Give me 2 seconds. 2 seconds, everyone. Oh my god. Respect time management, shall we? Dude, it's so crazy. Yeah, my parents wanted. I literally told them, I'm going to be doing a briefing on this weekend's severe weather event. And they just. Apparently, they completely forgot. Will I go live tomorrow? Yep, this weekend seems like a dangerous weekend for sure, everyone. Is Illinois going to get any strong storms on Sunday? We'll get into that. But the risks, as I said, do include a 5% chance for tornadoes, a 15% chance for winds over 58 miles per hour, and hail above 2 inches in some spots. So, something that people do need to keep in mind of. But a 30% chance of hail in central Texas. Moving over to the day which everyone is going to want to hear about, Sunday. Unfortunately, the Storm Prediction Center, for their day 3, respectively, does not have the specific probabilistics for each severe threat. However, I do have to say that there is a general risk of 45%. There's a 45% chance of something severe within. Oh goodness, that area is 82,686 square miles. So actually, I can go ahead and make this all enlarged for you all, so that you all can kind of see what all is happening. But there is the risk right there. It basically takes up parts of eastern Texas, parts of, well, just basically all of Louisiana, the southeastern part of Arkansas, all of Mississippi, all of Alabama, central to western parts of Georgia, and southern parts of Tennessee. So, people do need to be careful when it comes to this situation. Um, when it comes to, when it comes to the Storm Prediction Center telling us anything, all I can say is that they are using the O word, as AJ and I say.
Obama.
Whenever, nope, not fully, Daniel. Not when they use, oh goodness gracious, that pen is way larger than I wanted it to be. When they use the word outbreak, something is definitely wrong, chat. Something is definitely wrong. So it's one of those things where
on the day. That's the thing. They use it on day 2 sometimes, and on day 1 a lot. But on day 4, they almost never say outbreak.
yeah.
And they've been saying it since the first day 4 outlook yesterday at about this time. Actually, before this time, they said outbreak. And now on the day 3, if you look at the pink area, if you go to day 3, Nate, can you show this on your stream real quick?
Yeah, I'm showing it.
We dive way too into it. Go on to day 3 and then go probabilistic. It almost just feels like you see the 45%. It feels like they've really given them. That might be the high risk. That area right there. That might be about where we have a high risk. Now, it's not guaranteed that they go high. I don't know if they will, but I'd say there's quite a chance. The way parameters are looking right now, this is about on the line between high risk and moderate.
Yeah.
So, and this would be what? The second high risk in 2 years, correct?
Yeah. Well,
Maybe a second.
yeah.
We've had a lot of moderates that should have been highs. I think we've had 2 of those. But this is going to be the first high risk of 2020 if they go high.
Yeah.
Now, you said you wanted to talk more about Sunday. So, what are we looking at there?
Yeah, everyone wants. Oh, Saturday, yeah. So this entire weekend, it's not just Sunday, it's Saturday too. So it's just one entire elongated outbreak, if you will, of severe weather proportions. So let's go ahead and get into the possible timings of these storms. And mind you, if you do take a look in the description, it gives you a short briefing of, or an oversimplification of what is happening this weekend. But I am going to be uploading some update videos every now and then based off of what I see from the models. And so I'll try and keep you guys as updated as possible. And if all I ask is that you guys, I don't ask for clout or anything. I just ask that you guys inform people. All I ask is for people inside these risks, if you know anyone or if you live in these risks, to have a plan and to be prepared to get some sort of severe weather in your area. So let's go take a look at the timing. The timing for these storms in central Texas. You can see that these kind of scattered storms in northern part of Texas, that's not the risk, all right? That just seems to be just some scattered development just based off of high Cape numbers. However, these storms down here, if you watch these as they go through, this is at 3Z right now. So for Central Time, that right there is 6 o'clock, I believe. So it's one of those things where it's getting into the overnight hours, and you won't be able to see any of this unless if these are either really well lit up by lightning or just you guys have some really ambient features when it comes to like towns and stuff like that. By the way, if I'm skipping stuff apart of chat, it's because I'm trying to like put this out so that people after the fact, just in case if they need to see, they'd be able to know as quick as possible. And then we'll get to questions towards the end of the stream, if you will. So let's go ahead and take a look at the soundings in front of these storms that pop up right near the border of Texas and Mexico. A little bit contaminated, actually. I'm going to try and find a specific sounding for you all that isn't as contaminated. Unfortunately, it does seem that most of these are just going to want to be contaminated, so I might have to use College of DuPage's NAM Nest instead of the NAM 3K. Yeah, that's close enough. That's close enough. So, as you can see down here, the surface cape is absolutely crazy. I mean, in the 3,000 joules per kilogram area, that's basically what's going to set off this risk the entire weekend. I mean, that's basically right there. All you have to look at is the surface cape. And next to those numbers, you can see that the cap inhibition is actually minimal. So that means that these storms are going to continue to produce somewhat strong, kind kind of long-lived storms, but they won't be supercellular, or at least not really to the full extent of what would happen on Sunday, but still something to where the cap is just enough to the point where you could see some cells that spin up some tornadoes that could, it could do some damage. So you might want to go ahead and just take your precautions when it comes to that. As we continue for the timings later in the evening, or later in the night, I should say, the storms then do seem to kind of fizz out, but at the same time, it's just really some scattered storms that go ahead and head into right around the Austin area, in the San Antonio area, but later in the evening, it does seem to dissipate, or at least towards the morning, right around 7 in the morning for Central. So, right around there is when they kind of like fizz out a bit, but then that's when everything starts to ramp up and goes into Sunday. So that's something that we all need to go ahead and just keep our eyes peeled for that area. But let's go take a look at some soundings right around the Austin area and the San Antonio area, just to see what all is happening there. And you can see the Cape numbers are still relatively good. The helicity is okay. The lapse rates they're all right. They're in the higher end. They're actually higher than the risk out in Dixie Alley, but the hodograph doesn't really look all too impressive to some sort of extent. The critical angle is a bit lower than you would normally like it, but at the same time, we still have these risks where this could definitely produce some large hail. So something that we do all want to keep in mind as this thing continues to go on. Now, let's go ahead and head into Sunday, and we'll get into the specific risks of, like, the specific conditions, if you will, in those channels. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dew points. And the dew points, actually, as we get into Sunday, seem to advect from the Gulf of Mexico. So all of this raw energy coming out from the Gulf of Mexico is now being advected inland due to a warm front that would be passing through that area. So something that people do want to keep in mind, as before the actual storms will come near you, it will be very humid and it will be very moist. And that right there is a big no-no for all storms, as that could be, potentially be... Yeah, that could potentially be very, very dangerous. Continuing out, let's take a look at the winds and specific heights. First off, let's take a look at the trough, if you will. The upper level, the jet stream, as most people would hear, the upper level winds. And you can see, getting into Sunday, the winds start to rapidly intensify up into the 90 knot range and maybe even higher. As a matter of fact, some areas it gets up to 110 knots. So this thing just continues to just show components of severity, more than severity in some cases, where it's going to be really interesting to see what all happens. Let's take a look at the lower level jet now. The lower level jet is just the winds lower in the atmosphere. By the way, hello to everyone in the stream. You all are saying hi. Say hi back. Saying hi. Boom. Yeah, I remember you, by the way, Weather Express Live. I will say that. But the lower level jet now, look at this. Absolutely crazy as it enters over the risk. We got some in the 62 knot range, and maybe even a little bit higher in some spots, to where that's going to feel some really, really intense rotations when the two different levels of winds decide to overlap. And that right there would create the impending helicity that goes into tomorrow's threat. Now, let's take a look at the actual Cape. We'll take a look at the surface-based Cape, because that's the one that we're going to be focusing on the most, specifically because that's what this risk is built off of. So let's go ahead and take a look at the timings. The Cape starts to increase in southern Louisiana relatively early in the morning, heading into 7 o'clock. and then it just continues to go up and up and up. And there are even some areas where the surface-based cape even goes up to 3,500 joules per kilogram. And so it's just really where most of these areas, due to there being literally nothing to limit all the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, will get as much moisture as it is provided. So it's one of those things where, as I said before, all the ingredients are in place for this thing to continue to be rather intimidating and historic for a severe weather event. Now let's take a look at the surface-based cap inhibition, or actually, let's take a look at the surface-based, and we'll go ahead and take a look and see by any means will this be capped in any sort of way. And yes, I do see some capping inhibition, but once it gets closer to where the risk actually gets closer into Dixie Alley, it starts to become less and less, and it'll actually probably be around minimal, to the point where instead of a giant QLCS forming when there would be no capping inhibition, now it will have the discrete cells up along the line moving in, and that will pretty much likely guarantee that some cells will be able to stay long-lived when it comes to them sustaining in their life cycle. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the precipitation just along the line here, just to see just the formal timing according to the NAM3K. And you can go ahead and see that you have this morning convection that tries to take out, I'm sorry, that pen is actually white. Morning convection that tries to limit the Cape, but unfortunately, due to the proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, that Cape will just go ahead and advect inward, because this right here is the warm front that I was talking about. It pushed on through Dixie Alley early in the morning, and now we have some instability continuing to ramp up as the morning goes on. Now, as we continue into later in the morning and into the afternoon hours, we can start to see some scattered convection along parts of central Mississippi, but that right there is not the main risk. Right here is indeed the main risk. That should be right around 6 Central, 7 p.m. Right around there is when the actual line starts to form, and this right here is the risk, everyone. That is the main risk for tornadoes. As I take a sounding out in front of this, I will go ahead and show you that the Cape actually is, in some spots, 2,000 joules per kilogram, but if you take a look at the helicity in some spots, this actually isn't really a good sounding, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and go back one right where they form. Take a look right there. You can see that the helicity in some spots, you can't see the pen. Great. In some spots, it's almost up to 400 ms squared, and you can see that the photographs are absolutely perfect for long-lived supercells. Usually when you see how the photograph kind of twirls out to the side, that means that there is some sort of rotation and that it could go ahead and continue to cycle around and around until it doesn't have enough energy to sustain itself. As I take a look at the specifics of the actual sounding here, I can see that the capping inhibition is right around 0. That kind of limits a little bit as to the specifics. However, I don't think that really will be too much of an issue unless if the models decide to add a bit more capping inhibition. And that's really most about that. The lapse rates, if you take a look down here, are relatively good, in my opinion. Not as good as Saturday's risk, but Saturday doesn't have as much of a shear to boost itself. So it's not really something that is going to fuel as much for Saturday as it is for Sunday. As we take a look at the shear in specific spots, the shear would be around 50 to 55 knots at surface to 1 kilometer and surface to 3 kilometers, as well as the same with the helicity right around the 400 range. So it's just one of those things where the ingredients once again are still here. And so it's one of those things where this thing could get underway pretty much really rapidly. Now, the thing about shear events is that this equilibrium level, usually that indicates how tall the storms are. Anything above the 200 millibar level typically would be above 48,000 feet. Now, because the shear is absolutely mental, that would be, typically this would be around 50,000, maybe even higher. I would say now it's brought down to about 46,000 feet due to everything being tilted by all the shear. And when everything is tilted when it comes to rotation, that could indicate some very strong tornadoes, and possibly they could last for quite a while. So people over there need to go ahead, in these areas, just heed our warnings that you need to monitor the weather and that you need to have a plan of action just in case if things do get out of hand. I will now open it to the chat for questions. If you guys have anything to say, I'll let you guys go ahead and do so.
Something interesting is that there's been a lot of talk about this morning crap evection, as they're calling it. This convective thunderstorms developing in the warm sector in the early morning, and that could be taking away some of the Cape. I almost wonder, because I've been looking through all the model runs, it feels like there's something missing almost. I almost wonder if the models aren't perfectly picking up on that. Now, the thing is, they've been trending more and more towards an outbreak. There's been no downtrend. Usually around this time you see the models start to downtrend a little bit. So Nate, what I'm interested in is, do you think that early morning convection is going to have a negative effect on the Cape that's going to be available? You think it's going to put out a cold pool? Because none of the models are really showing it putting out a cold pool. So
that would kind of depend to how much convective activity there would be during the morning. So if there were obviously less convective activity in the morning, then obviously there would be no cold pool, and the Cape would just continue to rise and rise early in the morning into late in the afternoon. But if there was a lot more convection in the morning, then that could create a cold pool, and that could limit this risk down and potentially hinder the actual tornado outbreak.
Something with that is, I almost wonder if in southern Louisiana especially, it might, even that morning convection could be severe. Especially in the southern half of Louisiana, if you look at the Nam Nest especially. Mm-hmm. So, just because it's not the afternoon stuff, doesn't mean there won't be tornadoes. I mean, you look at the 2011 outbreak, just a couple states over in Alabama, there were morning thunderstorms that look a lot like these do on the models that were dropping tornadoes. And some of these morning soundings even have pretty good hydrographs. So I think that a lot of people are saying, oh, there's going to be that morning convection. In this kind of atmosphere, this kind of environment, this kind of setup, even that morning stuff is probably still going to be at least marginally severe. There is going to be, I think we're probably going to have our first tornado of the day before daybreak, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So,
I'd also like to add in too is one of the things that I've been very curious about is if there's possibly any form of clearing after that morning, that crapvection. I like that term, is if there's some sort of clearing, if there's not any kind of remnant CU fields or anything that kind of fills the gap between the two and creates almost some form of like kind of artificial convective inhibition. Or the clouds just tap into it and become it, but like I'm curious if there'd be some element of clearing in between the two events. You know?
Yeah. I
mean,
mean,
it would be moist at the surface, but then also reheating, farther destabilizing the atmosphere from where it already was, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's the thing. I almost wonder if this outbreak might be trending further north because of that. I almost wonder if like the southern half, right now the southern half of Louisiana is not in the moderate, pretty much. I almost wonder if Mississippi and Alabama are going to be that way too. If it's only going to be like the southern half of the state, maybe south of Jackson. Mississippi would be about where that line is, where the high or the moderate or where the highest risk of the day is going to be. That's just what I wonder, because that morning stuff seems to, a lot of it's going to be down in the southern half of the outlook area, especially down by let's see here, kind of by south of Alexandria and south of Jackson. So I wonder if that's going to limit the threat south of there, but north of there might still be pretty damn juicy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, and on the, I think it will probably put out a cool pool, but the issue is, I don't know, just because of how insane the setup's going to be, I don't know if that inhibition's going to be enough. I mean, the storms back in 2011, those put out a pretty beastly cool pool. I say cool pool because it wasn't especially strong, but it was there, and it could have provided inhibition, but it just didn't, you know? So a lot of it depends on, because it doesn't matter how much convection you have. If it's able to break through that convective inhibition and get rooted, it doesn't matter if there's been a 5 or 10 degree cooling, you know?
The only thing about that though is that you also have to account for the advection in the Gulf of Mexico after the warm front passes by, because that convection is a part of that warm front, if you will. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's a flip of a coin if the storms linger, but at the same time, you know, this could trend further north because of that. So, chance of East Texas being updated to a moderate, not too high, my friend. I wouldn't say so, in my opinion. There just really isn't a lot of helicity and shear to make it go moderate. Shreveport, will it be in the risk? Not really. You'll get some severe storms possibly, but I don't think it'll really be that much of an issue for you. Beaumont, Texas. Let's take a look where that is. Beaumont, Texas. 2 seconds. That looks like oh, it's just east of Houston. For Easter, that should be fine. There really shouldn't be a lot of things impacting Beaumont. There will probably
Beaumont. Say it right.
Beaumont. I don't know.
Sorry if I right.
Beaumont. I don't know.
Well, now you've learned. Beaumont.
Beau. Beau. Close enough.
God, I can't wait.
Oh, well, you can't wait until we go chasing AJ.
Oh man. Oh yeah. If you say Kearney, Nebraska, I'm gonna slap you.
I'm gonna say everything to trigger everyone.
Nate, I have another interesting thing. I posted a sounding in the streaming channel around Del Rio on Saturday. Look at the cape on that, man. There are going to be some big hailers on Saturday. You should show that.
Yeah, showing it right now. Definitely big some a really large amount of cape. Just, whew. I mean, that thing is going to be crazy. Low tops, but really, really large cape. So, Beaumont, as I said, won't be in it. Beaumont will probably be in the enhanced for this stuff. So maybe a chance of some tornadoes from the previous night, because all of that is moving through, and that's going to be a part of the risk as well in Dixie Alley. Yeah, some big hailers over in Del Rio. I mean, everything, just for the people who don't know what CAPE is basically convective available potential energy, and that measures how much of that energy is available for storms to develop. So a good way to see that in the actual, this right here, this little box that I am outlining, is called a skew T chart. So best way to find Cape in a skew T chart is if you take a look at this red line, which is measured as the temperature as a said parcel goes into the air, and this dotted line right here, which is called the parcel line, in which a developing thunderstorm would take. So anything in the middle, right in the middle of those two, is the Cape. So something that is definitely too much of for in. I haven't really dealt with that high caped events besides one that most of you probably know of on the stream. So for this is quite a lot for me, but Cape obviously can go up higher than that. So
yeah, it's a sign of what time of year it is once you start getting Cape values that high. I mean, that's kind of how you can measure from early spring to mid-spring, is once the Cape values start getting up around 3,000, 4,000 joules per kilogram at the surface. And what is it on that sounding? If I can read this here.
Surface is 4,480.
Yeah, just about 4,500 joules per kilogram, which is a lot of Cape. That is a lot of energy. So you don't really need a super high top storm there for some big hail out of that.
Yep. Atlanta in the risk, I do believe it is. It is in the enhanced for Sunday. So definitely something as it gets closer in the midnight to later than midnight hours. You're going to want to go ahead and take your precautions, have a plan in place so that if the said severe weather gets near, you can take your proper precautions and be as safe as possible. And the big thing about this entire event and why we're doing it right now and letting you guys know what exactly is happening is so that you guys know what to expect and to let you guys and to inform you all of what stuff. I kind of just repeated myself, didn't I, chat? Seems legit. And to recommend that you all should have a plan in place for these potentially dangerous storms heading into the deep south. Let's see. Now we're talking about storms in another cell. Alright, fine. We'll go to Texas real quick and make you all happy, shall we? It's over near Midland.
Today for just a little bit further west of the enhanced tomorrow.
Oh god, that hail spike. Oh goodness gracious, that hail spike. When they update it, it will go high, you can almost guarantee. Okay, so for my in my opinion, for the Storm Prediction Center, they probably won't issue a high risk until at minimum midday tomorrow. They won't issue it tonight. And if there were to be a high risk, I can see it either on the 2Z update on Sunday morning, or not the 2Z, that's not 2Z, the 6Z run on Sunday morning, or I can see it during the day. I don't actually know what that is in Zulu time, but it would be either during the day tomorrow or that morning on Sunday. So let's go ahead and take a look at these storms though out in Texas. You had some in 74 dBz. Seems legit. These storms are mental. This turned in from a briefing stream now to an analysis stream in like 2 seconds.
Good job, chat.
Anything else? Any other questions based off of the actual severe weather event?
I thought I saw one in chat I wanted to talk about. Hold on, let's scroll up here.
Yeah, you feel free and feel free to have discussion topics based off of these events either on Saturday or Sunday, because the more we can talk about and talk to chat with, then then the better, I should say. Check the base velocities in Texas. The one down here is looking weird.
Atlanta and the risk. That's what that was one.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. Atlanta, I don't really think Atlanta's going to be on Saturday, or Sunday. But I think Monday Atlanta's in the risk. If I can look at the day 4 here.
Sunday Atlanta's in the risk, but it's an enhanced.
It's in the enhanced. That's going to be an overnight threat for Atlanta, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be after dark. Atlanta is on the edge of the risk on day 4 as well. It'll probably be in a marginal, maybe a slight. But it's going to be an overnight risk on Sunday, Atlanta is. So, yeah. It's kind of... It's interesting because it's going to be covering a lot of ground on Sunday because it's going to start off in Louisiana and Arkansas. It's going to make it all the way to Georgia.
Yeah.
It's going to be covering 4 states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 states.
Yeah.
Actually, regarding that, and this will probably be more in the background with with the streaming crew, but that actually kind of ties into that little list. I don't know if anyone, I don't know who saw that earlier, that I put together, where it'll kind of be like a zonal coverage during the event tomorrow, and I almost set up kind of like miniature coverage areas, almost similar to that of like a county warning area for a National Weather Service office, just like a cluster of them, so that there could be kind of that spatial distribution of like who's covering where, so that we're not really bouncing between or like looking at one event all at the same time, bouncing between. So definitely take a look at that, and obviously we could talk more afterwards and after this, but yeah, definitely.
You've been seeing.
Moderating tomorrow, so,
Yeah. What time will storms start in Dixie? Here's the thing. So, the models are kind of wonky, if you will, when it comes to actual thunderstorm development because it's really all over the place. Personally, I think it will develop right around, I'd say, stuff will start to fire up maybe right around the 2 to 3 o'clock area, just thunderstorms in general, and then maybe even turn tornadic within seconds of that, and then it will continue to head off into Dixie, and it'll be an overnight event, so something that people do actually want to monitor as this goes on and on. In your opinion, how close is this outbreak to the 2011 outbreak? Relatively close, in my opinion. As a matter of fact, the setup is almost identical to the one on the 27th. If I were to bring up my pictures real quick, this right here is the tornado probability for the 27th, and you can see how the 30% tornado risk actually was just a bit more to the north and east than this actual tornado risk for Sunday is. So it's relatively similar in that aspect, as well as the conditions, not actually too far off at all. So definitely something that people need to basically put names to faces, if you will. But in this case, it's just storms to past experiences. You've been seeing, I've been seeing analogs showing a possibility of some strong tornadoes, especially around the Alabama area. What do I think? I think that there will definitely be the opportunity for some strong long track tornadoes. Now, notice how I said the word opportunity. Okay? There could be some instances where nothing happens, which we all hope. There could be the opportunity to where nothing happens and this entire thing is just poofs out of existence. So, it's not guaranteed that there will be strong, violent tornadoes that could stay on the ground for quite a while. But it's looking very much so like there could possibly be. For anyone curious, back at the probabilities of Sunday for the day 3, That's what it is right there. So it's relatively close in the aspect of April 27th, 2011. What about
something on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's going to be a little bit further west. I don't think the main tornado. Now, there's still going to be a tornado threat through most of Alabama, but I think that the main threat, the way it's trending, is going to be Birmingham and west is where the worst is going to be, in my opinion. It's going to be Birmingham and places west of there. Now, we get another NAM nest run coming. It's going to be rolling pretty soon here, and that's going to bring the whole of Saturday into view.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see what those storms do, because right now the last frame, the storms are only about halfway through Alabama, but the next run's really going to bring it into view. And I just wonder how far those storms are going to maintain their distinct updrafts and don't start bowing out or fizzling out in any way.
Yeah.
The way it looks right now, it looks like it's going to be further west than 2011's super outbreak in Alabama.
Yeah.
But also with the crap convection in the morning, I almost wonder if that southern half of the outlook's going to get trimmed up a little bit. It's still early.
I could see that too, and that goes right into our next question. What about New Orleans? So, New Orleans is not out of the risk either. You're literally almost, I'd say, 20 miles away from the 45% risk. So, you're definitely in the hatched, and I wouldn't be surprised if you guys got some relatively intense storms as well. Granted, this is still 3 days out, meteorological wise, but still something that people do need to keep in mind, as regular updates will be made not only on my part, but the Storm Prediction Center's part too, as well. Is this expected to go QLCS? QLCS. Not really, in my opinion, because of the traces of cap inversion. So that'll leave some gaps in the line that'll allow supercells to go ahead and get as much inflow. And that's kind of the reason why, that kind of supports what the Storm Prediction Center says of long track tornadoes, and stuff like that. Any rain in Ohio tonight? I don't really know.
It's going to be an MCS, not a QLCS. It's going to be a convective system that's on the mesoscale.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty large, but it's not really going to be linear, if that makes sense. It's going to be connected, but there will be distinct individual updrafts, and there will be some separation between cells. And on the New Orleans question, I'm just looking at it a bit more. It depends on what the morning convection does. They might actually get 2 rounds down there. One in the morning on the warm front and another one in the afternoon with the larger system coming through.
Yeah.
And New Orleans, I wouldn't say they're out of the woods yet. I think the next NAM run's really going to bring a lot of things into focus when it comes to exactly where we're talking about storms being. But I'm going to try and pull a sounding from New Orleans right now, and I'll get back to you on that. Nate, you can take another question while I try and find a good one.
Yep. Tornado or severe outbreak, and is it going to be PDS? Definitely tornado, and if they issued a PDS watch for the moderate up in northern Illinois and parts of Iowa, you can almost guarantee that if the conditions continue, you can definitely see some PDS watches down in Dixie Alley.
Honestly, I would not be entirely surprised if they just go ahead and issue a PDS right off the bat out of abundance of caution. Like, just stay tuned for that. But obviously the SPC issuing PDS convective watch is pretty profound and not very oftenly done. But obviously with these conditions, even with significant parameters, even if it doesn't verify, I wouldn't be surprised just based on kind of what we're seeing so far and the inherent risks at hand. I definitely would not necessarily be surprised to see one, but I wouldn't say flat out, all right, it's gonna be a PDS watch at the moment. Sure, obviously PDS warnings, that'll be different. Even if a single tornado verifies, that might just be enough. But Yeah, it could be in both ways. It could either be a PDS watch or have several storms that may or may not entail a PDS tag with them if it verifies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pulled a sounding for New Orleans. The issue with New Orleans is I don't know if there will be supercells that far south. Now, the morning convection you might get some severe from, and you might get some severe from the main system, but I don't know about supercells getting that far south. We'll have to wait for the next NAM run to really bring it all into view. But
Yeah.
I did pull a sounding for you, Nate. I put it in the channel there. It's pretty decent. Not as much Cape as a bit further north, and the shear is all right. There's a little bit of contamination, but that's the best I could find for any of the NMS frames.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see some potential based off of the sounding. This is 3Z 3Z.
Yeah, so that'd be around 10 p.m.
Interesting. So this
that's a bit after I thought the threat would be over for NOLA. So that's
yeah. I mean, you might have to try and find something closer to the afternoon as well.
Everything earlier was a bit contaminated though. So again, we're just gonna have to wait for more runs, really.
Yeah, I would say so. I'll let chat ask more questions if they need to. Final thoughts on this potential outbreak? Not really.
Anyone else, or am I gonna have to do that?
That wraps it up unless there's any other outstanding questions.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'll wrap up with my opinion here because I know everyone wants to hear that. I don't know if this is going to be quite as bad as 2011, but it's looking awfully bad right now. And I keep looking back at the models thinking there has to be something I'm missing here because the soundings are just looking really good. But there really isn't. It's just a really, really strong setup.
Here we go.
Now, that morning convection, you do have to worry about that cutting off things, or hope that cuts off things. But I don't think it's going to be prolific enough to actually do that in a significant manner. I think that the main threat, though, is going to be basically on a corridor from Alexandria to Jackson to Birmingham, kind of just on that line.
Yeah.
And then maybe further north, Shreveport to Greenville, maybe all the way to Chattanooga. So you just got to pay attention to the weather on Sunday, man.
Brennan Welch, thank you for the subscription.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Just stay informed, preferably here on Nate's YouTube channel. I won't be on the stream on Sunday, but I will be moderating chat. I see somebody's posted an advertisement. Wonderful.
Seems legit. But
That seems legit.
what is the storm slinky on the sounding? That actually is a great question that I feel like Ruff would know because Ruff is all high and mighty. Do you have any idea what the storm slinky is?
So, well, I'm pretty sure what that's referring to is what's called that's called a hodograph. Or is he talking about the storm slinky, the actual storm slinky?
Yeah, the actual storm slinky.
Oh, I'd like to say it's just I always forget about what the storm slinky is. I don't tend to usually refer to it.
Yeah.
Given its kind of low resolution. I know it has something to do with I think it's like your parcel trajectory or something like that.
That sounds about right, yeah.
It has to do with just the way the parcels are going to move in terms of direction or something. I forgot exactly. It's a very good question, and I would definitely have to look more into that before I said anything concretely. But I know it has to do with something regarding that.
So if I remember correctly, I think it's where is it just the parcel line? Is it just the parcel line, but plotted on a 2D?
Yeah, I think it's just the parcel line relative to height. I think what it's referring to is that next to the wind barbs, depending on what renders it, it's usually the most soundings you'll see in general are the Sharpie renderings on College of DuPage. and you'll see next to the wind barbs, there's these like weird color lines. I'd like to say there's some relation between them because it seems like the color scaling is somewhat similar.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd have to look more into that. That's a really good question.
Yeah. I mean, and granted, no one obviously, you know, everything on here is important, but some are used more often than not. Some are used for specifics just for out of curiosity. Obviously, we all use the photographs and the SQT as well as lapse rates just by looking at the numbers and all that stuff. But
the STP is pretty important too. I do like the STP.
Yeah, STP is it's all right in my opinion, but it doesn't hurt to look at it every now and then. Yeah. Brendan, would you like to say your final thoughts on this entire event?
Honestly, it's pretty serious. I would say, like, obviously, let's not run for the hills and come to any conclusions and be like kind of take an alarmist approach and be like there's going to be a super outbreak or there will be major cities affected. But more times than not, or like this particular case, I would say that there are more places that are at a seemingly higher risk for these to possibly happen. And it's a pretty large population area. I'm sure you could see over on the SPC page that Nate had fired up, where you could kind of see those population areas. And thankfully, graciously to the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, they actually give a numerical base of what the population is, as well as the square mile acreage and all that. Or sorry, square miles. But yeah, so basically, don't run for the hills to say anything. Definitely not taking an alarmist approach, but definitely not stressing enough that this could be a very significant event, and to just keep tuned and keep an eye out for updates or anything wherever you're looking at your weather, whether it's your TV, whether it's Discord, whether it's YouTube. But yeah, just keep that in mind and be prepared. Obviously, it's better to be prepared and safe than surprised when it comes to you, you know. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Yep. Daniel, do you want to say anything?
No, I'm fine.
You're fine. You're fine.
I think that's just about all. Yeah.
Does Ethan have a mic?
The new NAM run just started rolling, I think. So,
yeah. We'll definitely take a look at that, but that'll be on the next informational. Ethan, you have a mic?
Yeah.
Would you like to say your 2 cents on this event? Yeah, it is. It is working.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, good, because it wasn't.
No, you're fine. You're back.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be a pretty serious outbreak. Have to keep watching it.
All right. Well, that's gonna be it for this this briefing. Obviously, there will be more briefings later. Probably in the weekend. Probably before the Saturday event, and then probably during the Saturday event. You know, we'll just try and keep on top of this as much as we can, just to try and let you all know what all is happening. So thank you guys for coming out. Obviously, self-promotion. I didn't do it in the beginning of the stream. I probably should have done it, but you know what? We're doing it now. Obviously, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell, share, stuff like that. And yeah, I'll see you guys later, probably on Saturday. So peace.
Thanks, Brennan.
Yeet.